The sun cast long, unforgiving shadows across the dusty plains of Wyoming Territory, as Olivia Keller's scream pierced the afternoon air, drowned out by the terrifying crack of wooden wheels giving way beneath her father's burning wagon. Xavier had been riding hard for 3 days, his cattle drive nearly complete when the black smoke on the horizon caught his attention. He'd spurred his horse forward without a second thought, abandoning his post at the rear of the herd. His foreman would curse him for it later, but something in his gut told him this detour couldn't wait. It was 1872, and the promise of new railroad connections had brought a fresh wave of settlers to these parts. Lucas had seen many come and go, broken by the harsh realities of frontier life. At 26, he'd already spent 8 years working cattle drives across the territory, his skin weathered beyond his years, his eyes sharp as a hawk's from scanning horizons for trouble. Trouble was exactly what he found as he crested the small rise and saw the wagon train below. 3 wagons had formed a defensive circle, but it hadn't been enough. One was completely engulfed in flames, another overturned, and the third riddled with arrows. Bodies lay scattered, men, women, and horses alike. Lucas drew his Winchester from its saddle holster, approaching cautiously. The attack appeared to be over. Whoever had done this was long gone, having taken what they wanted. As he neared, he heard a faint cry for help coming from beneath the burning wagon. "Hello," he called out, dismounting and approaching carefully, his boots kicking up dust. "Please," came a woman's voice, weak but determined. "I'm trapped." Lucas dropped to his knees and peered beneath the wagon. Through the smoke and flames beginning to lick down the side panels, he could make out a young woman pinned beneath a fallen wooden beam, her dress covered in soot, her face streaked with tears cutting clean lines through the grime. "Hold on," he said, removing his leather coat and using it to shield himself as he crawled closer. "I'm going to get you out." The heat was intensifying, the wood crackling ominously above them. Lucas knew they had minutes, perhaps seconds, before the entire structure collapsed completely. "My leg," she gasped, her eyes wide with fear and pain. "I can't move it." Lucas assessed the situation quickly. The beam that pinned her wasn't burning yet, but it would be soon. He positioned himself beside her, bracing his shoulders against the heavy timber. "When I lift, you need to pull yourself out. Can you do that?" She nodded, her determination clear despite her obvious pain. Lucas summoned every ounce of strength, muscles straining as he pushed upward against the crushing weight. The beam moved just enough, and he watched as the young woman clawed at the ground, dragging herself forward inch by painful inch. The wagon groaned above them, and Lucas felt the heat intensifying against his back. "Hurry," he urged through gritted teeth. With one final desperate effort, she pulled herself clear, and Lucas let the beam drop, scrambling backward and dragging her the rest of the way out just as the wagon collapsed behind them in a shower of burning splinters and ash. They lay in the dirt several yards away, both gasping for breath. When Lucas finally raised his head to look at his rescued companion, she was staring back at him, her face dirty and tear-streaked. And then, unexpectedly, she smiled a smile so genuine, so full of gratitude and relief that it struck Lucas like a physical blow. To his own astonishment, tears welled in his eyes, spilling down his cheeks before he could stop them. In that moment, with death so close and life so precious, that smile was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Thank you," she whispered, reaching out to touch his arm with trembling fingers. "I thought I was going to die under there." Lucas wiped at his eyes, embarrassed by his emotional display. "You're safe now, Miss Olivia Keller." She tried to sit up and winced, clutching her leg. "Don't move just yet, Miss Keller. Let me check that leg." Her dress was torn, revealing an angry red gash along her calf, but the bone appeared intact. Lucas removed his bandana and tied it carefully around her wound. "Are there any other survivors?" she asked, her voice catching as she looked around at the devastation. Lucas shook his head grimly. "I just arrived, haven't had a chance to check thoroughly, but it doesn't look good." He helped her to sit up, supporting her weight. "What happened here?" "Raiders," she said, her voice hardening. "They came so fast, said they wanted our supplies, our horses, when Pa tried to stand up to them." Her voice broke, and Lucas followed her gaze to a body lying face down about 20 yards away. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Olivia nodded, swallowing hard. "I was hiding in the wagon when they set it on fire, tried to escape, but—" She gestured to the smoldering ruins. "The wheel broke and everything fell." Lucas surveyed the area again. "We need to move. Whoever did this might come back, and we're sitting ducks here." He whistled and his horse trotted over. "Can you ride?" "Yes," she said, though uncertainty flickered across her face. Lucas helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as she tested her injured leg. She grimaced but managed to stand. "It's not broken, I don't think, just cut and bruised badly." He boosted her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. "There's a town about 4 hours' ride from here, Sweetwater Creek. We can get you to a doctor there." As they prepared to leave, Olivia clutched his arm. "Wait, my father, I can't just leave him here." Lucas hesitated, looking at the bodies scattered around them. "Miss Keller, I understand, but we don't have the tools to bury them properly, and it's not safe to linger." Tears streamed down her face, but she nodded. "Then at least let me say goodbye." Lucas helped her down and supported her as she limped to her father's body. She knelt beside him, turning him gently to reveal a face frozen in defiance, even in death. Olivia brushed the hair from his forehead and bent to kiss his cheek. "Goodbye, Pa," she whispered. "I'll make you proud." Lucas stood respectfully a few paces back, hat in hand. When she was ready, he helped her back onto the horse, noticing the steel that had entered her spine despite her grief. They rode in silence for the first hour, Olivia occasionally stiffening when the horse's gait jostled her injured leg. Lucas kept his arms around her, holding the reins but also providing support so she wouldn't fall. "My name's Lucas Xavier," he finally said, breaking the silence. "I work for the Crescent Moon Ranch, driving cattle up from Texas." "Is that where you're from, Texas?" Her voice was quiet but steady. "Originally, left home at 18, been working drives ever since." He adjusted his grip on the reins. "What about you? Where were you headed?" "Oregon. Pa said there was good land there, a chance to start fresh." She sighed heavily. He was a dreamer, always chasing the next opportunity. "Nothing wrong with dreams," Lucas said. "That's what built the West, dreams and blood," Olivia corrected, then fell silent again. As they rode, Lucas found himself increasingly aware of her presence, the subtle lavender scent that somehow persisted beneath the smoke and dirt. The way she held herself erect despite her injury and exhaustion. The occasional brush of her hair against his chin when the wind caught it. By the time Sweetwater Creek came into view, the sun was setting, painting the horizon in fiery oranges and reds. The small town consisted of a main street with wooden boardwalks on either side, a few cross streets with modest homes, and the usual establishments: saloon, general store, blacksmith, and a small hotel. Lucas guided his horse directly to the doctor's office, a whitewashed building with a small sign in the window. He dismounted first, then reached up to help Olivia down, catching her when her injured leg buckled. "I've got you," he said, lifting her into his arms without hesitation. "I can walk," she protested weakly. "I'm sure you can, but why should you when I'm right here?" He carried her up the steps and shouldered the door open. Dr. Henry Morgan was a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a graying beard. He looked up from his desk, immediately rising when he saw Olivia's condition. "Bring her in here," he directed, leading them to an examination room. "What happened?" As Lucas set Olivia gently on the table, he explained about the wagon train attack while the doctor examined her leg. "You're fortunate, young lady," Dr. Morgan said. "The cut is deep but clean. No sign of infection yet, though we'll need to watch it carefully. You have some bad bruising along your hip and ribs too, I suspect, but nothing appears broken." He cleaned and stitched the wound while Lucas waited outside, pacing the small reception area. When the doctor finally emerged, he looked tired but satisfied. "She'll heal well enough. The leg will be sore for some time, but with proper rest and care, she should regain full use of it." He fixed Lucas with a penetrating gaze. "She's asking for you." Lucas found Olivia sitting on the edge of the examination table, her leg bandaged and her face and hands cleaned. She looked up when he entered, that same smile forming on her lips, though tinged with fatigue and sadness now. "The doctor says I'll live," she said, attempting lightness. Good news indeed, Lucas replied, his own smile coming easily. Do you have anywhere to stay in town? Her smile faltered. No, everything I had was in that wagon. Lucas nodded, having expected as much. There's a decent hotel down the street. I'll get you a room and we can figure out next steps in the morning. I can't pay you back, she said frankly. Not now anyway, I'm not asking you to. He offered his arm for support. Think you can walk with help or should I carry you again? A hint of color rose in her cheeks. I can walk, thank you, though I may need to lean on you a bit. Lean all you need to, Miss Keller. They made their way slowly to the Sweetwater Hotel, a two-story building with a small lobby furnished with worn but clean furniture. The proprietress, Mrs. Winters, took one look at Olivia and clucked sympathetically. You poor dear, what happened to you? As Lucas explained briefly, Mrs. Winters's face grew grave. Those must be the same raiders that hit the Miller homestead last week. Sheriff's been trying to track them, but they're slippery as eels. She insisted on giving Olivia her best room at a reduced rate, which Lucas paid for in advance for 3 nights. Just until you're back on your feet, he told Olivia when she began to protest. Mrs. Winters also promised to find some suitable clothing for Olivia, as her own dress was torn and smoke damaged beyond repair. And where will you be staying, young man? Mrs. Winters asked Lucas pointedly. I need to send a telegram to my foreman, let him know where I am. Then I'll find a room at the saloon. Nonsense, Mrs. Winters declared. I have another room available. You look dead on your feet yourself. Lucas couldn't argue with that assessment. The events of the day had left him drained, and the thought of a real bed instead of a saloon floor was appealing. Once arrangements were made, Lucas helped Olivia up to her room. It was simple but clean, with a bed, washstand, and small dresser. I'll be just down the hall if you need anything, he told her, suddenly awkward now that they were alone again. Try to get some rest. Lucas, she said as he turned to leave, I don't know how to thank you for what you did today. He shook his head. No thanks needed, Miss Keller. Olivia, she corrected gently. Please call me Olivia. Olivia, he repeated, tipping his hat. Sleep well. As he closed the door behind him, Lucas was struck by a realization. He had no intention of returning to the cattle drive anytime soon. Something about Olivia Keller had hooked itself deep inside him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that their paths crossing was more than mere chance. The next morning dawned clear and cool, a welcome respite from the previous day's heat. Lucas woke early, as was his habit from years of pre-dawn roundups. He washed and dressed, then headed to the telegraph office as soon as it opened. He sent a brief message to his foreman, explaining that he'd encountered survivors from a raider attack and would be delayed indefinitely. It wasn't the complete truth, as Olivia was the only survivor, but it would have to do. Lucas knew his actions might cost him his job, but he couldn't bring himself to regret them. Next, he visited the sheriff's office to report the attack. Sheriff Thomas Walsh was a grizzled veteran of the frontier, with a weathered face and a reputation for fairness. Sounds like the same bunch that's been terrorizing these parts for months, Walsh said after hearing Lucas's account. They hit quick, take what they want, and disappear into the hills. Some say they're renegade Comanche, others think they're white men disguised as Indians. Whoever they are, they slaughtered innocent people, Lucas said grimly. Walsh nodded. I'll send a party out to recover the bodies, give them a proper burial. As for the girl, she's welcome to stay in Sweetwater as long as she needs. Folks here look after their own. She's not exactly one of your own, Lucas pointed out. She is now, Walsh said simply. Anyone who survives what she did has earned that much. After leaving the sheriff's office, Lucas stopped at the general store to purchase a few necessities for Olivia: a hairbrush, some soap, and a small bottle of rose water he thought she might appreciate. The storekeeper's wife, upon hearing Olivia's situation, insisted on adding a sewing kit and some hair ribbons to his purchases at no extra charge. When Lucas returned to the hotel, he found Olivia in the small dining room, dressed in a borrowed blue calico dress that was slightly too large for her slender frame. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and though her face was still pale, some color had returned to her cheeks. Good morning, he said, setting his packages on the table beside her plate of barely touched eggs and toast. I brought you a few things. Olivia looked up, surprised. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. He took the seat across from her. How's the leg today? Sore, she admitted, but better than yesterday. Dr. Morgan came by earlier to check the stitches. Lucas nodded, noting the dark circles under her eyes. Did you sleep at all? Not much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw. She trailed off, pushing her plate away. I keep thinking about everyone we lost. The Millers, the Thompsons, the Jacobsons, all gone. I spoke to the sheriff, Lucas told her. He's sending men to recover the bodies, give them proper burials. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. Thank you for doing that. Lucas ordered coffee for himself, watching as Olivia opened the packages he'd brought. She smiled at the rose water, uncorking it to inhale the scent. It's lovely, she said. You're very thoughtful, Mr. Xavier. Lucas, he corrected with a small smile. If I'm calling you Olivia, it's only fair. They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Olivia asked, "What happens now?" Lucas had been pondering that same question all morning. That depends on what you want. Do you have any family elsewhere who could take you in? She shook her head. It was just Pa and me. My mother died when I was 14. We've been moving west ever since, never staying in one place long enough to put down roots. What about Oregon? Is that still where you want to go? Olivia stared out the window at the dusty Main Street. That was Pa's dream, not mine. I just followed along because he was all I had. She turned back to Lucas. I don't know what I want anymore, except maybe a place to belong. Lucas understood that feeling all too well. Despite his years with the Crescent Moon outfit, he'd never truly felt like he belonged there or anywhere else since leaving his family's failing farm in Texas. What about you? Olivia asked. Won't your employers be expecting you back? Lucas shrugged. Probably already replaced me. Good cowboys aren't hard to find these days. He took a sip of his coffee. Truth is, I've been thinking about settling down somewhere myself. 8 years of sleeping under the stars sounds romantic until you've done it through blizzards and floods. Olivia smiled at that, a genuine smile that reached her eyes and made Lucas's heart skip a beat. Well, it seems we're both at a crossroads. Seems so, he agreed, an idea forming in his mind. The sheriff mentioned that Sweetwater's growing, railroads coming through next year. They need all kinds of workers and tradespeople. Are you suggesting we stay here, in Sweetwater? Olivia looked surprised. Just until you're healed up proper, Lucas clarified quickly. And then, well, we can figure out the next step. Mrs. Winters approached their table, refilling their coffee cups. I couldn't help overhearing, she said, not looking the least bit apologetic for eavesdropping. If you're considering staying, Olivia, Alice over at the dress shop is looking for an assistant. And Lucas, I know for a fact that the livery stable needs experienced hands. Lucas and Olivia exchanged amused glances at the older woman's obvious matchmaking. Thank you, Mrs. Winters, Olivia said politely. I'll keep that in mind. After the proprietress moved away, Olivia leaned forward. She's quite determined, isn't she? Small towns, Lucas said with a chuckle. Everyone knows everyone's business and they're not shy about offering opinions. It's not entirely unwelcome, Olivia admitted. It's been a long time since anyone besides Pa took an interest in my welfare. Lucas wanted to say that he was taking an interest, a very personal interest, but held his tongue. It was too soon for such declarations, especially given what she'd just been through. Instead, he said, why don't we take it one day at a time? You focus on healing, and I'll see about finding some work to keep us both fed. Us, Olivia raised an eyebrow. Lucas felt his face warm. Figure of speech, I just meant I know what you meant, she interrupted gently, and I appreciate it more than I can say. But I don't want to be a burden to you, Lucas. You've already done so much. You're not a burden, he said firmly. You're a friend, and out here, friends look out for each other. The word friend felt inadequate even as he said it, but it would have to do for now. Over the next few days, a routine developed. Lucas found temporary work at the livery stable, mucking stalls and exercising horses. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to extend their stay at the hotel. In the evenings, he would return to find Olivia in the hotel parlor, often in conversation with Mrs. Winters or other town ladies who had taken her under their collective wing. Dr. Morgan checked her wound regularly, pleased with how it was healing. By the end of the week, Olivia was able to walk short distances without assistance, though she still tired easily. On Sunday, Lucas escorted her to the small white church at the edge of town. They sat in a back pew, Olivia in a new dress provided by Alice from the dress shop, Lucas in his cleanest shirt with his hair slicked back with water. The sermon was about perseverance through trials, and Lucas couldn't help glancing at Olivia throughout, marveling at her strength. She had lost everything and everyone she loved, yet here she sat, head high, facing her future with courage. After the service, they were introduced to what seemed like the entire population of Sweetwater. Everyone had heard about the girl who survived the Wagon train massacre and the cowboy who saved her, and they were objects of considerable curiosity and goodwill. Among those they met was Edward Miller, owner of the town's only bank and several other businesses. Miller was a portly man in his 40s with shrewd eyes and an assessing gaze that made Lucas instantly wary. "Miss Keller," Miller said, bowing slightly, "your story has touched us all. If there's anything I can do to assist you during your time in Sweetwater, you need only ask." "That's very kind of you, Mr. Miller," Olivia replied with proper politeness. Miller's gaze shifted to Lucas. "And Mr. Xavier, I understand you've been working at the livery. If you're looking for more permanent employment, I may have something suitable." "My ranch outside town needs a new foreman." Lucas was surprised by the offer. "That's generous, sir, but I don't have experience managing a ranch. But you do have experience with cattle, and you clearly have good judgment and quick thinking." Miller glanced meaningfully at Olivia. "Both valuable qualities in a foreman. Think about it. The position includes use of a small house on the property." As Miller moved away to speak with others, Lucas and Olivia exchanged looks. "A house," Olivia said softly. "That would be quite a step up from hotel rooms." "It would," Lucas agreed, though something about Miller's manner left him uneasy. "But I'm not sure I'm ready to tie myself to one place just yet." Olivia nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "Of course, you've always been on the move." "I shouldn't expect that to change just because," she stopped herself. "Because what?" Lucas prompted. She shook her head. "Nothing. It's just been nice having a friend these past days." Before Lucas could respond, they were drawn into conversation with the blacksmith and his wife, and the moment passed. That evening, they took supper at the hotel as usual, but Lucas found himself uncharacteristically quiet, mulling over Miller's offer and Olivia's reaction to it. "You're thinking about the foreman position," Olivia said as they finished their meal. Lucas looked up, startled by her perceptiveness. "How did you know? You've been frowning at your plate for the last 10 minutes, she said with a small smile. "I think you should consider it seriously." "Do you?" He studied her face. "Why's that?" Olivia placed her napkin beside her plate, choosing her words carefully. "Because I think you're tired of drifting, Lucas. I see it in your eyes sometimes, the same longing my father had not for the next horizon, but for roots." Her insight struck him deeply. "Maybe you're right," he admitted. "But what about you? What do you want, Olivia?" "I start work at the dress shop tomorrow," she said, changing the subject slightly. "Alice says I have a good eye for color and detail." "That's wonderful," Lucas said sincerely. "But it doesn't answer my question." Olivia sighed, meeting his gaze directly. "What I want isn't straightforward, Lucas. A week ago my life was on a clear path. Now everything's changed and I'm still finding my footing." "I understand," he said, reaching across the table to briefly touch her hand. "There's no rush to decide anything." But as they said goodnight in the upstairs hallway, Lucas felt a mounting urgency within himself. Each day he grew more attached to Olivia, to her quiet strength, her unexpected flashes of humor, the gentle way she spoke to children in the street. He was falling in love with her, and the realization both thrilled and terrified him. The following week brought changes for both of them. Olivia began working at the dress shop, sitting at first to spare her healing leg, measuring fabric and helping customers choose patterns. Lucas continued at the livery, but also rode out to Miller's ranch to see the foreman's position for himself. The ranch was substantial, with good water access and well-maintained fences. The small house Miller had mentioned was rustic but sound, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a front porch facing the mountains. It was more of a home than Lucas had had in years. Miller offered him the job on the spot, with a wage that was more than fair. Lucas asked for time to consider, which Miller granted with obvious reluctance. That evening, Lucas found Olivia waiting for him on the hotel porch, her face alight with excitement. "Alice offered me a partnership in the shop," she announced as soon as he approached. "Her arthritis is worsening, and she needs someone to take over the sewing. She says I'm a natural with the needle." "That's wonderful news," Lucas said, genuinely pleased for her. "Congratulations." "There's more," Olivia continued. "She has rooms above the shop where she lives. She's offered to let me stay there, rent-free until I'm established." Lucas felt a stab of disappointment at the thought of Olivia moving out of the hotel away from him. "That's very generous of her." "It is," Olivia agreed, then hesitated. "What about you? Did you see Miller's ranch today?" Lucas nodded, sitting beside her on the porch swing. "I did. It's a good operation, and the house is nice. Miller offered me the job." "And," Olivia prompted when he didn't continue. Lucas turned to face her, suddenly certain of what he wanted to say. "Olivia, I've been thinking." He was interrupted by the arrival of Sheriff Walsh, looking grim. "Xavier," the sheriff said with a nod. "Miss Keller." "Sorry to intrude, but I thought you should know we caught one of the raiders responsible for the attack on your wagon train." Olivia stiffened beside Lucas, her hand finding his on the swing between them. "Who is it?" Lucas asked. "Man named Silas Holt," Walsh said. "Had some items we traced back to your people, Miss Keller. A pocket watch with initials JK engraved on it." "My father's watch," Olivia whispered, her grip on Lucas's hand tightening. "He always said he'd give it to his son-in-law someday," Walsh nodded. "Holt's locked up tight, but he's not talking. Won't say who the others were or where they might be hiding out. Thought you might want to know we got at least one of them." "Thank you, Sheriff," Lucas said. "That means a lot to both of us." After Walsh departed, Olivia remained silent, staring out at the darkening street. "Are you all right?" Lucas asked softly. "I should feel something relief, satisfaction knowing they caught one of them," she said. "But all I feel is empty. It doesn't bring anyone back." Lucas put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, her head resting against his chest. They sat like that for a long while, the porch swing moving gently, until the first stars appeared in the evening sky. "You were about to say something before the sheriff arrived," Olivia finally said. "What was it?" Lucas took a deep breath. "I was going to say that I've decided to take the foreman job." She pulled back slightly to look at him. "You have. That's wonderful, Lucas." "But I have a condition for Miller," he continued. "The house he's offering, it's too big for just one person." Olivia's expression grew puzzled. "What are you saying?" Lucas took her hands in his heart hammering in his chest. "I'm saying that in the short time I've known you, Olivia Keller, you've become the most important person in my life. I'm saying that I think God brought us together for a reason, and I don't want to let you go." "Lucas," she breathed, her eyes widening. "I know it's fast," he hurried on. "Too fast, maybe. But out here, life moves differently. We both know how quickly everything can change, how precious each day is." Tears filled Olivia's eyes, but she was smiling that same beautiful smile that had first moved him to tears beneath the burning wagon. "Are you asking me to marry you, Lucas Xavier?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am," he said, certainty filling him. "I love you, Olivia. I think I've loved you since the moment you smiled at me from beneath that wagon. Will you marry me and make a home with me here in Sweetwater?" For an agonizing moment, she was silent, tears spilling down her cheeks. Then she nodded once and then again more firmly. "Yes," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Yes, I will marry you, Lucas." He pulled her into his arms, his own eyes wet with emotion. When they kissed, it was soft and sweet and full of promise. The news of their engagement spread through Sweetwater like wildfire. Mrs. Winters was especially delighted, taking full credit for bringing them together. Alice insisted on making Olivia's wedding dress as a partnership gift, and even Edward Miller seemed pleased, particularly when Lucas accepted the foreman position. They were married 2 weeks later in the little white church, with half the town in attendance. Dr. Morgan gave the bride away, and Sheriff Walsh stood as Lucas's best man. Olivia wore a simple but elegant gown of ivory satin with lace at the collar and cuffs, her auburn hair adorned with white roses. When Lucas saw her walking down the aisle toward him, that same smile illuminating her face, he felt tears of joy spring to his eyes once more. He made no attempt to hide them this time, letting her see exactly what she meant to him. Their vows were traditional but spoken with deep conviction. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas kissed his bride with a tenderness that brought sighs from the ladies in attendance. The celebration afterward at the hotel was lively, with music and dancing despite Olivia's still healing leg. Lucas kept her close, introducing her proudly as my wife to anyone who would listen. As evening fell, they slipped away to the foreman's house, their house now on Miller's ranch. Lucas had spent the previous days preparing it, with help from some of the ranch hands who seemed pleased to have a married foreman. There were fresh curtains at the windows, new linens on the bed, and wildflowers in jars on every surface. Lucas carried Olivia across the threshold, setting her gently on her feet in what was now their home. "Welcome home, Mrs. Xavier," he said, still marveling at the words. Olivia turned in a slow circle, taking in the simple but comfortable surroundings. "It's perfect," she declared. "Our own place at last." Later that night, as they lay in each other's arms, Olivia traced the line of Lucas's jaw with gentle fingers. "I never thought I could be this happy again," she said softly. "After everything that happened, it seemed impossible." Lucas caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "I felt the same way the day I found you, like something impossibly precious had been given to me. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't seen the smoke that day, if you just kept riding with your herd?" Lucas shook his head. "I don't believe that was ever a possibility. I was always meant to find you, Olivia, and you were always meant to smile at me from beneath that wagon." She nestled closer to him, her head on his chest. "I'm glad you cried," she whispered, "when you saw my smile. No one had ever cried over me before." "I'll cry over you anytime you like," he promised, making her laugh softly. "I'd rather see you smile," she said, lifting her face for his kiss. In the months that followed, Lucas and Olivia settled into life in Sweetwater. Lucas proved to be an excellent foreman, earning the respect of the ranch hands and the approval of Edward Miller. Olivia's partnership with Alice flourished, with her natural talent for dressmaking bringing new customers from neighboring towns. Their little house became a true home, with a vegetable garden out back and curtains at the windows that Olivia had sewn herself. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset over the mountains and talking about their days. They became fixtures in the community, attending church on Sundays and town socials when they were held. Olivia joined the Ladies' Aid Society, and Lucas helped organize a volunteer fire brigade after a close call at the livery stable. 6 months after their wedding, they received unexpected news. Silas Holt, the captured raider, had finally broken his silence, giving up the names and location of his accomplices. Sheriff Walsh organized a posse, which Lucas joined despite Olivia's concerns. "I need to do this," he told her the night before they were to ride out. "For you, for your father, for everyone who was lost that day." Olivia nodded, her eyes troubled but understanding. "Just promise you'll come back to me." "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," he vowed, holding her close. The posse was gone for 5 days, tracking the raiders into the hills. When they finally cornered them in a box canyon, there was a brief but intense firefight. 2 of the raiders were killed, and the remaining 3 were captured. Lucas returned home with a bullet graze on his arm but otherwise unharmed. Olivia cleaned and bandaged the wound herself, her hands steady but her eyes full of unshed tears. "It's over now," Lucas told her as she worked. "They'll stand trial and justice will be done." "I know," Olivia said quietly, "but justice doesn't bring anyone back." "No," Lucas agreed, "but it might help others sleep easier, knowing these men won't hurt anyone else." Olivia nodded, finishing the bandage and pressing a kiss to his forehead. "I'm proud of you, Lucas Xavier, and I'm very glad you're home." That night, as they lay in bed, Olivia took Lucas's hand and placed it on her stomach. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice soft with wonder. "Dr. Morgan confirmed it yesterday. We're going to have a baby." Lucas stared at her in astonishment, then whooped with joy, gathering her carefully into his arms. "A baby, really?" Olivia laughed at his reaction. "Really. In about 7 months if the doctor's calculations are correct." Lucas kissed her, his hand still resting protectively over the place where their child grew. "Are you happy about this?" "Happier than I ever thought possible," she assured him. "Are you?" "I'm going to be a father," he said in wonder. "We're going to be a family, Olivia, the three of us." The news of the baby spread quickly through Sweetwater, bringing congratulations and advice from all quarters. Mrs. Winters immediately began knitting baby clothes, and Alice insisted that Olivia reduce her hours at the shop as her condition advanced. Lucas became even more protective, checking that the house was warm enough, that Olivia wasn't working too hard, that she had everything she needed. She tolerated his fussing with good-natured patience, understanding that it came from love. As winter gave way to spring, Olivia's body changed, her slender frame now softly rounded with their growing child. Lucas found her more beautiful than ever, especially when she would place his hand on her belly to feel the baby's movements. "He's strong," Lucas would say, convinced they were having a son. "She's active," Olivia would counter, equally certain they were expecting a daughter. They spent the spring preparing for the baby's arrival, converting the second bedroom into a nursery. Lucas built a cradle with his own hands, working on it in the evenings after returning from the ranch. Olivia sewed tiny garments and blankets, setting them aside in a cedar chest Lucas had purchased from the carpenter in town. As Olivia's time grew closer, Lucas arranged for one of the ranch hands to take over more of his duties so he could be home more often. Miller grumbled but agreed, having developed a grudging respect for his foreman over the past year. On a warm evening in early June, as they sat on their porch watching fireflies dance in the twilight, Olivia suddenly gasped, her hand going to her belly. "Lucas," she said, her voice tight with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "I think it's time." Lucas had rehearsed this moment in his mind countless times, but now that it was happening, he felt a moment of panic. Then his training took over the same calm decisiveness that had helped him save Olivia from the burning wagon. He helped her inside and made her comfortable on their bed before riding like the wind into town to fetch Dr. Morgan. By the time they returned, Olivia's pains were coming regularly, and her face was flushed with effort. "This is going well," Dr. Morgan assured them both after examining Olivia. "First babies often take their time, but everything is progressing as it should." Lucas stayed by Olivia's side throughout the labor, wiping her brow, holding her hand, and murmuring words of encouragement. As the night wore on and her pains intensified, he found himself praying fervently for her safety and that of their child. Finally, as the first light of dawn crept through the bedroom window, Olivia gave one last tremendous push, and their baby entered the world with a lusty cry. "You have a daughter," Dr. Morgan announced, placing the squirming, red-faced infant on Olivia's chest. Lucas stared in wonder at the tiny life they had created. She had a shock of dark hair like his and what seemed to be Olivia's delicate nose. She was the most perfect thing he had ever seen. "Hello, little one," Olivia whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "We've been waiting for you." Lucas found himself crying too, overcome with emotion as he had been that first day beneath the burning wagon. But these were different tears of pure joy and gratitude for the incredible gift of his family. "What shall we name her?" Olivia asked, looking up at Lucas with that smile he adored. Lucas touched his daughter's tiny hand, marveling as her fingers curled reflexively around his. "How about Hope? Because that's what she represents for us, hope for the future, hope that beauty can come from ashes." "Hope," Olivia repeated softly. "Hope Xavier, it's perfect." News of Hope's birth spread through Sweetwater, bringing visitors bearing gifts and good wishes. Mrs. Winters arrived with a knitted blanket and booties. Alice brought a beautiful christening gown she had made herself, and even Edward Miller sent a silver rattle with his congratulations. In the weeks that followed, Lucas and Olivia adjusted to life with their daughter. There were sleepless nights and challenging days, but there was also joy beyond measure in watching Hope grow and change each day. Lucas would often hold Hope in the evenings, rocking her on the porch while telling her stories about her brave mother who had survived against all odds. Olivia would listen, smiling at his embellishments but touched by the love in his voice. As Hope grew from newborn to infant, the Xavier family became even more firmly established in Sweetwater. Lucas was promoted to ranch manager when Miller expanded his holdings, and Olivia began taking on special commissions for wedding dresses, her reputation as a skilled seamstress spreading throughout the territory. On the first anniversary of their wedding, Lucas surprised Olivia with a locket containing a tiny portrait of Hope on one side and a lock of her hair on the other. "I want you to always have her close to your heart," he said, as he fastened it around her neck. "She already is," Olivia replied, touching the locket reverently. "Just as you are." That night, after Hope was asleep in her cradle, they sat on their porch swing as they had so many evenings before, Lucas's arm around Olivia's shoulders, her head resting against him. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Olivia asked. "If you hadn't seen the smoke that day, if you hadn't found me under that wagon," Lucas considered the question. "Sometimes. But then I look at you and Hope, and I know that this is exactly how things were meant to be. Every trail I rode, every choice I made was leading me to you." Olivia turned her face up to his, that same smile that had first captivated him lighting her features. "I believe that too. Out of all that tragedy came the greatest blessing of my life, you and Hope." Lucas bent to kiss her, still marveling at how this remarkable woman had become his wife, the mother of his child, the center of his world. "I love you, Olivia Xavier," he whispered against her lips. "And I love you, Lucas Xavier," she replied, "always and forever." As the stars came out overhead and the distant howl of a coyote echoed across the plains, they held each other close, secure in the knowledge that whatever the future might hold, they would face it together, the cowboy who had cried at a smile and the woman he had pulled from beneath a burning wagon, now bound by love and the precious life they had created together. In the years that followed, the Xavier family flourished in Sweetwater. Hope grew from a baby to a toddler, running on sturdy legs across the yard, her dark hair flying behind her, her laughter a constant melody in their home. She had Lucas's determined nature and Olivia's gentle heart, a perfect blend of both her parents. 2 years after Hope's birth, Olivia gave birth to a son they named James after her father. Jamie, as they called him, was a quiet, thoughtful child with auburn hair like his mother's and eyes that seemed to take in everything around him with careful consideration. With 2 children to raise and their respective businesses thriving, Lucas and Olivia were busier than ever, but they never forgot to make time for each other. Their evening ritual of sitting on the porch together continued, a sacred space where they could talk about their days, share their dreams, and simply enjoy each other's company. Sweetwater grew along with the Xavier family, the promised railroad finally arriving and bringing new prosperity to the town. The dress shop expanded under Olivia's guidance, eventually becoming the finest establishment of its kind in 3 counties. Lucas, having proven his worth many times over, purchased shares in Miller's ranch and began acquiring small parcels of land of his own. Through it all, the bond between Lucas and Olivia only strengthened. The trials they had faced together, from the wagon train attack to the challenges of building a life in the frontier, had forged a connection that nothing could break. On Hope's 5th birthday, as they watched their daughter blow out the candles on her cake, surrounded by friends who had become like family, Lucas leaned close to Olivia and whispered, "Did you ever imagine we could be this happy?" Olivia looked around at the life they had built, their beautiful children, their comfortable home, the community that had embraced them, and shook her head. "Never, but I'm grateful for it every day." Later that night, after the children were asleep, Lucas took Olivia's hand and led her out to the porch swing. The night was clear, the sky ablaze with stars, the air fragrant with the scent of the roses Olivia had planted along the walkway. "I have something for you," Lucas said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small package wrapped in tissue paper. Olivia unwrapped it carefully to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with 5 small charms: a wagon wheel, a star, a heart, and 2 tiny figures representing Hope and Jamie. "Lucas, it's beautiful," she breathed, touching each charm reverently. "Each one represents a chapter in our story," he explained as he fastened it around her wrist. "The wagon wheel for how we met, the star for the night I proposed, the heart for our wedding day, and one for each of our children." "Our story," Olivia repeated softly. "It's had its share of tragedy, hasn't it?" Lucas nodded, thinking of the burning wagon, the lives lost, the struggles they had faced. "But so much more joy," he said, drawing her close. "And it's still being written every day we're together." Olivia leaned into his embrace, her head finding its familiar place on his shoulder. "I wouldn't change a word of it, not even the painful parts. They all led us here, to this moment, to this life we've built." As they swayed gently in the porch swing, Lucas reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From the moment he'd spotted smoke on the horizon and spurred his horse toward it, to this quiet evening with his wife in his arms and their children sleeping peacefully inside, every step had been leading him home. He remembered the tears that had fallen when he first saw Olivia's smile beneath that burning wagon, tears of relief, of connection, of something he couldn't name at the time, but now recognized as the first stirring of the love that would shape his life. "I'm still moved by your smile, you know," he told her, his voice low and tender. "Just as much as that first day." Olivia lifted her face to his, that same radiant smile blooming. "And I'm still grateful for those tears," she replied. "They showed me who you really were, even before I knew your name." Their lips met in a kiss that held all the passion and tenderness of their years together, a promise renewed with every touch. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the Wyoming sky, a fleeting moment of brilliance against the eternal darkness. Neither Lucas nor Olivia saw it, too lost in each other to notice. But perhaps it was fitting a reminder that even in the vastness of the frontier, with all its dangers and uncertainties, two souls had found each other and created a light of their own, a warmth and brilliance that would endure long after that falling star had faded from the heavens. For Lucas and Olivia Xavier, who had found each other in the most desperate of circumstances, every day was a gift, every moment together a miracle. From the ashes of tragedy, they had built a life of love, family, and purpose, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the healing power of love. And it had all begun with a burning wagon, a daring rescue, and a smile that had moved a cowboy to tears.